After studying the scripture carefully, I discovered that rebellion is not just an action, it is a pattern of character. That is to say, it is something that grows from the inside before it shows in the outside. So in this video, I am going to uncover the characteristics of a rebellious person, showing proofs and examples from the Bible. And the aim is so you can use it to examine your life to see if you have any of these traits of rebellion and do away with it before you suffer their consequences. And without any further ado, let's get into this video by first of all revealing the characteristics of a rebellious person. The main characteristics of a rebellious person in the Bible are disobedience and pride. These two traits form the foundation of rebellion and are visible in every major example of resistance against God in the Bible. Disobedience is the outward expression and pride is the inward root. And when both of them combine, rebellion takes shape in a human life. And now going to the Bible to see when these characteristics of rebellion were being displayed in the life of humans, let us begin by the example of our first parents, Adam and Eve. Now, as recorded in Genesis chapter 2, verse 16 to 17, we see how God forewarned Adam and Eve not to eat of the fruit in the middle of the garden. And in Genesis chapter 3, verse 6, we see how Adam and Eve disobeyed God and ate of that fruit. Now, one thing that stands out in the example of Adam and Eve rebelling against God is that they did not just wake up by themselves to plan this rebellion. Rather, they were being tricked into it by the first angel who rebelled against God, who was known as the angel Lucifer. The second example is that of King Saul, who was the first king in the land of Israel. In 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 3, we see how God commanded King Saul to go to war against the Amalekites and destroy everything that was connected with them. But when King Saul went into that war, as recorded in 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 9, he decided to spare King Agag and all other livestock that was in that land. That is to say, when King Saul went into the land of the Amalekites, he discovered that they had so much wealth. There was so much riches in that land, and for that reason he decided to spare the king of the Amalekites and return with all kinds of livestock. And while he was trying to find a justification of his disobedience by telling Samuel that he brought the livestock so he can use them to offer as a sacrifice to God, Samuel made it known to him, as recorded in 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 22, that obedience is better than sacrifice. And so, drawing from these two examples, as we have clearly seen, disobedience was the root cause of why Adam and Eve and King Saul rebelled against God. And now, moving on to pride as a characteristic of rebellion, let us still survey the story of our first parents, Adam and Eve. Now, as we see in Genesis chapter 3, verse 5, the angel Lucifer, who disguised as a serpent to tempt Adam and Eve into rebelling against God, told them that if they eat of the fruit in the middle of the garden that God forbade them not to eat, their eyes were going to open and they were going to become like gods, knowing good and evil. Now, when you study that deeply, you will understand that Adam and Eve were being overcome with pride. That is to say, it was pride that moved them into eating of that fruit in the middle of the garden. And when you go back to the story of the first rebellious being in the Bible, that is the angel Lucifer, as recorded in Ezekiel chapter 28, verse 17, you will discover that it was pride that moved the angel Lucifer to rebel against God. That passage helps us to understand that he was created with so much beauty and brightness, and then this beauty and brightness was what corrupted his wisdom and moved him to rebel against God. And now, if you had time to study other examples of rebellion in the Bible, you will still discover that disobedience and pride remains their root cause. And for this reason, we human beings must ensure that we examine ourselves every time to ensure that disobedience and pride is not found in us, because if it does, we are definitely going to rebel against God. Finally, as usual, please do not keep this message to yourself. Help me to share it so that our fellow Christians can have this understanding of disobedience and pride as the characteristics of a rebellious person, and do them away from their lives so they do not end up rebelling against God. Remain blessed.